This is Matt for Intu Boxing. We're here with Chris Ridgway for Intu and Black Box Management, Dean Whyte. Boys, it's a pleasure. We're just going to do a bit of a review of 2021 and talk about some of the best fights that we've seen, some of the shocks, some of the upsets, and a bit of a sidebar for what we can expect coming next year. So we'll start with Dillian Whyte and Povetkin, Gibraltar. I was there. Dean, I know you were there. That was a mad occasion. Talk to me about how much pressure was on Dillian for that fight and to make sure he put right what went wrong at fight camp.
Yeah, there was pressure, but I felt like for me, just talking to him, even straight after the fight, I think we done some interviews leading up because obviously a lot of people were shocked, and it was shocking. It was kind of what's the word? It was airy. It was death-defying because that knockout was shocking. It was fire. It was a final. It was just like it was so silent, but the volume of that knockout because it was just like. It was mad. Everyone was in shock. I was like, what the fuck? Because he was battering him for that whole fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to pull that out the bag, but this is boxing, this is heavyweight boxing as well. Pull that out of the bag, give him credit, and you see what it meant to him. So after the fight, Dillian was like, listen, I know exactly what I've done. I need a rematch. And afterwards, he was kind of somber in terms of when you think of, he was just like, I know I did wrong. Don't worry, I know I did wrong. And it's kind of, some people say that and just say that after a fight because that's all they can say because they're quite in shock. But he was adamant all the time. He's like, trust me, don't worry, bro. I got his number, 100%. I'm gonna fix him. So I think it was more down to, there was a bit of, he said, he felt like it was a lot easier than he imagined the battle he fought in his mind. Do you know, like when you face a battle in your mind with anything, whatever test you do, or if you spar and then you go and think, well, that wasn't as bad as I imagined it to be. I thought it was going to be worse. So, I felt like he found it too easy in there initially and then switched off. And then, the rest is history. So going in there, he just said, listen, I'm not going to show Povetkin any respect. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to show him exactly what he is, an old man, and I'm going to get rid of him. And he done exactly that. And even for me, as much as I believe in what he says and what he does, to actually go and put it into action is easy and as convincing. And it's another thing, you know what I mean? But Dillian's got that kind of that mentality, that wear your heart on your sleeve, the passion and belief in anything he does. Is confident that he believes he's going to win and be successful.
Yeah, Dean, it was the first time we spoke, wasn't it, on when we started doing podcasts, and Dave Caldwell came on just after it. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. We spoke about that fight and we said that Povetkin was laying traps and all the rest of it. And when he caught Dillian with that shot, because it was like the fight was as good as done. Dillian had won. He'd knocked him down 2-3 times. I can't remember now, 2 or 3 times. And you were just waiting for the ref to wave it off, really. And then from nowhere, or seemingly from nowhere, I remember it because it was like a stand-up moment. Do you know what I mean? Like you were watching the fight, chilled out, good fight. You kind of know where it's going. It's an enjoyable fight. And then from nowhere, it made me stand up. Like, what the hell has just happened?
Yeah, what the?
Exactly.
Are we watching the same fight? What happened here?
My head just went like, what the?
Yeah, and you know what? The best word I use is it was against the run of play. Like football. When like Alex Ferguson's team always scored the goal in the dying seconds and they nicked the fight on the line. How the hell did they fucking do that? It was that kind of moment, you know what I mean? So, it was very, sometimes I feel like losses can define people and create them and make them, appreciate certain stuff because sometimes when you're on a unassailable ship, when you're going one way, sometimes when people say things to you, you don't hear them. It's only when a loss occurs, then it makes you rethink and question other things and thinking, you know what? That person was probably right when they said this or when they said that and stuff like that. And I think maybe it's benefited Dillian somewhat.
I think in the real world, losses are a part of sport. We spoke to Lyndon Arthur, didn't we? The Floyd Mayweather effect. is like, oh well, if you get a loss, then you're done and it's over, and you might as well go and jack it in. You mentioned football there. Man United will play Liverpool twice this season, and twice next season, and the season after, and they're going to win some of those games, and they're going to win, and they're going to lose some of those games. You think Dillian's come back, and I think it's sort of, like you say, it's defined him in many ways, because over 2 fights, if he had lost the second fight again, you would have said, right, well, that's he can't go above Povetkin level because he's there. But the fact that he's beaten him over however many rounds it was before the knockout, then lost against the run of play, as you say, then he's come back and just basically picked up where he was off before that and destroyed the guy. That shows to him, right, now he's ready to, he was already ready to move on, but you know what I mean? He can kick on now and he can put that behind him. And when you talk about highlights for 21, Dillian, he's ending the year as the mandatory, whether it's Tyson or anyone else, he's ending the year as mandatory, having come, having started this year off a knockout. Do you know what I mean? And you're thinking, oh, well, if Povetkin gets that again, you can probably wait. You can probably kiss goodbye the title shot. Certainly
Absolutely.
for a couple more years at least. But now, 31st of December rolls around this year. He's waking up 2022, waiting for the call for a title shot.
Yeah, that for me is why he's in the highlight, because his whole world got switched around in the space of a second when Povetkin hit him with that uppercut. And he still had the balls and the character to say to Eddie straight after the fight. I think Eddie was doing an interview and he goes, "We'll get the rematch." That shows character. And you put your whole sort of thing on the line to sort of get that back. And if there's anyone who deserves a shot at a world title, it's him. I mean, he risks so much against the likes of Oscar Rivas. I know we talk about Lucas Brown, but at the time Lucas Brown was undefeated. Nobody really knew how good he was. Yeah. He risked it against Joseph Parker. We've now seen how good Joseph Parker actually is when his whole tools are unlocked. So he always put the risk in, waiting. And it would have been a shame if he never got that chance. So at least now, God willing, fingers crossed, and we hope it's Fury in the new year, we can get that fight underway. And we spoke a little bit about that, Dean, in Manchester on Saturday. Just to sort of gloss over it, what's the likelihood you think of Queensberry Top Rank accepting some sort of split? I think Dillian's got a legal thing still going on in the background with regards to maybe a split, I think. But what do you think will sort of happen in your opinion?
Yeah, the arbitration is more so that Dillian gets what he deserves as the mandatory and as the WBC interim world champion, because that entitles you. They're two different things. As the mandatory, I think, is a maximum of 30%. As the WBC interim world champion, I think it's a maximum of 45%.
Yes.
But I believe the numbers they're swirling around was it 10 or 13% what Tyson Fury tried to swirl around that Dillian needs to take. No, that was Top Rank and Frank Warren that went to the 20. But I think there was a small dig earlier previous that Tyson Fury round. Allegedly, it's not. I haven't got any evidence of that, but I mean that he said 10 or 13%, and then Top Rank and Frank Warren said 20%. But yet again, they're both below mandatory and the interim world champions numbers. So I mean, if these guys are fighting for legacy and that they would fight anyone, the lineal champion, I don't understand why they're questioning numbers. Tyson Fury said he gives his purse away whenever he fights, allegedly a few times. So I'm not sure why he'd be moaning and begrudging another colleague in the sport the right percentage, as he says he gives his money away to charity. So I don't know. That's just a bit of a thought, food for thought for people. So it's a bit strange you want to back someone down so hard if you're only going to give your money away. That's what he says. But I think I'm not going to lie, I think we might be a little way off still, because it seems they're saying if Dillian doesn't take what's offered as a good boy, they're going to go somewhere else. And I've heard a lot of talk. Luckily, I keep in with many different various people. And I probably hear more than Dillian because I talk to a lot of people. So I've heard from very good high sources that these guys are in, quite advanced talks about, the Usyk match and AJ stepping aside. I'm hearing, they're in talks.
Dillian Whyte,
they're trying to.
Dillian Whyte.
No. Tyson Fury and then are they're not trying to fight Dillian. Basically, what the situation is. So there's some threats there, you know, on the table, and obviously they know Dillian's not going to take those kind of offers, so they're already looking. And you've seen it in the news anyway. They said, well, if he doesn't take this, we're going to move on and maybe throw the WBC in the trash. I think I did touch on that the other day. So I don't know. Games.
Yeah. There's still time anyway. I mean, from obviously a media side of it, but from a fan's point of view, the press conference alone for Fury versus Dillian would be absolutely brilliant. So, you know, we'll move on to another fight. So we've got a few to go through, but let's nicely move on to Fury Wilder 3, because that was a hell and back war, the third fight, the trilogy. That
was a great fight.
Hopefully that will set up Fury and Dillian, but we're going to wait to see. Let's talk about Wilder first. Obviously, he went out on his shield in that fight, which is something that I think he probably got a lot more out of it than he did from the second fight when he got beat. So he didn't say anything. He kept his mouth, you know, quite closed after the third fight. A lot of people were showing him respect rather than listening to what obviously came out after the second fight. Where do you think Deontay goes from here? Is there still a space for him, you know, at the elite level in boxing, or do you think he'll, you know, maybe look at retiring? What's your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. He came out of that with, you know, for me, with glowing reviews, and I think his credibility is somewhat restored, because he came with proper zest, proper passion, and he gave it his all. And he didn't really, like you say, I didn't really hear any too much speeches at the end. But what I do know is he showed that warrior side, what he was been talking about, and wanting to go out on his shield and trying to fight the good fight. And I mean, it was one hell of a fight. Both guys have been knocked down, got up, and I mean, like, listen, you know, if you're a boxing fan, that's a fight you're gonna say is gonna go down in history as one of the best trilogies, especially in my era, in modern era times. You know, the old school times, there was a lot more of these trilogy fights. We're not getting a lot of them, but there are still some to make, because there's one. Let me just quickly touch on this, because Fury and Chisora could make a trilogy. Dillian and Chisora can make a trilogy, and those fights would go down, because Dillian's 2 fights with Chisora are epic in themselves as well. So, you know, in modern time, we can look for, you know, great fights that we will look back and say, shit, these guys were amazing. It's not as much as the old school times, but that fight with Fury, you know, and Wilder, you know, I was on the edge of my seat watching that, and I mean, what a fight it was. I mean, I don't know. I felt like
his body actually shook. I mean, when he got hit with that, I think it was the first knockdown, Wilder, like, it was worse, I think, than him fully stretching, because he punched through the target and Tyson's back just rippled. That was one of the maddest.
And it was a slow knockdown. He was like there, and then it just went, and then he just went down and that. Yeah, so it was it was a fight. You know, it's kind of, you know, like it's gone to because I watched so much fights. Like I'm sure you guys watch so many fights. It's kind of gone back to the memory. But when I actually watched it, I kind of was, you know, it was fresh in my memory. It was exhilarating, just remembering the back and forward exchanges. And I'm not going to lie, many people wouldn't have got up from some of them shots. Deontay Wilder was kind of hitting him with, and especially that shot. But what I did think, and I always knew there was going to be a problem, the way he started and he was exerting too much energy and in his shots. And it was always going to be difficult for him to continue with that explosiveness throughout the fight as a heavyweight. And I think that's what kind of let him down. Once he started to slow down, started to get a bit fatigued, you know, he started to get catched with good shots. But I mean, what a fight! What a fight!
I was just glad it delivered because I mean, yeah, of course it was one of the best of the year. Of course it'll go down in history and everything else. But if you remember at the time, there was all this clamour for Joshua Fury, whichever way around you. It had to be this. It was, yeah, Saudi Arabia, then the rematch and whatever. You know, there was big plans in place. And all of a sudden, I remember from nowhere, I was coming out of the gym one night and I got a notification, like Wilder's just popped up, won his arbitration case. And I remember all of a sudden, the show's on the road now. Do you know what I mean? Boxing requires you know, you can have the best boxers in the world, but there's no narrative, doesn't sell, doesn't work. And Fury and Wilder are two of the biggest characters in the sport. They've got this obvious history, and because of the way it's gone, we're led to believe they absolutely despise each other, and they're ready to just rip each other to pieces. And everybody else is forced to take a back seat. Could you imagine if that was a dull, drab hugathon? It would have done so much damage to the sport of boxing. But I watched it with a couple of fans, a couple of mates who were casuals, you would call them. They would watch the maybe 4 or 5 fights a year, and that's at maximum. And they were absolutely edge of the seats. If you remember earlier in the night, there was the Liverpool card for a matchroom, the Smith Fowler card, that delivered amazingly well as well. So everyone was buzzing from that. And then they've watched the Fury Wilder fight, and they're all talking about who goes where from next, how, and that's where you hear the names that are sort of circulating around those guys pop up. So Usyk's name's coming up, Dillian's name's coming up, Chisora's name's coming up, and all these guys, all of a sudden, they're passionate, if you like, about it for that couple of hours, and it brings them into the sport. And I just remember thinking, I'm so glad it delivered. If that was a football equivalent of a 0-0, 1-0, bit of a boring, whatever, it would have damaged the sport. The AJ Fury, imagine, especially if Wilder had won, the AJ Fury boat would have sailed, and for what? Whereas now, there's a lot of hype back in it, even if it's not maybe for Fury AJ immediately.
Yeah, that ship still might have sailed, depending on what happens in Joshua Usyk. Because obviously, depending, I know we've mentioned there, Dean, you mentioned about step aside, but if Dillian does get his shot at Tyson, then obviously Joshua will go into that fight with Usyk. That was next on the list to discuss that I put down. A lot of people had wrote Oleksandr Usyk off based on a couple of performances against, obviously, Derek Chisora, who was obviously a completely different style to Anthony Joshua. And he had another fight in the US where everyone was saying, we're not really sure about the weight. And he came in there very calm, didn't say very much, just did his usual antics. And he put on an absolute boxing masterpiece against Anthony Joshua. Incredible performance. Took centre ring a lot of the times. And there was spells in that fight, especially towards the end, where he nearly had him out on his feet and knocked him out. And I think he even said, he goes, there was no need to, because the fight was won. So talk to us about that fight. Start with you, Dean. How impressed was you with Oleksandr Usyk? And now he's beaten Anthony Joshua. What do you think of the rematch? What does Anthony Joshua have to do differently to get a different result?
Do you know what? Usyk's a special fighter. Look, man, he went through the amateurs, well-decorated amateur. He fought all customers, and he fought at heavyweight anyway. So he faced the likes of Joe Joyce and a lot of the big guys anyway. So he's used to these big, rough, kind of solid-looking guys. I don't recall Anthony Joshua facing him, but I mean, they would have been on the trajectory at some point. Maybe whoever went pro first, they might have missed each other. But this was always going to be on the cards, Joshua tried to go and outbox a boxer, pure boxer, mover, skillful, someone who sets traps, is just like a step ahead of you every time with whatever they're doing. You know what I mean? Whatever they give you is only for them to counter in their chess move, and that's what Usyk does. He does that chess move all the time. I felt that, to me personally, I felt Joshua boxed okay. I felt he boxed good. I felt he could have been a bit more rougher and rugged. Other than that, I felt like he boxed okay. Once in the clinches, he should have been a bit more physical, a bit more stronger to unsettle Usyk, because he made him too comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I felt like Usyk's face told his story. He was in a hard fight. You know what I mean? The 2 times we've seen him, he fought Derek Chisora. I'm not gonna lie. I thought Derek Chisora gave him a run for his money. That was close as far as I was concerned. He was getting punched from pillar to post. In round 7 and 8, there was some close rounds that he did some good stuff. But I felt Derek, he looked like he was scared for his life in there with Derek. And Derek is a fucking wrecking ball. I mean, when he's on you, he just doesn't stop. And look, as we saw Saturday night, he could take unlimited punishment coming forward and just getting busy. And that kind of thing, it's not everyone that can take that kind of fight and that kind of pace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it sounded like you was going to say something. That's why I paused. I see Matt that was...
No, I was waiting for Chris to jump in. I was like, go on.
Well,
no, sorry, go on. Whoever's carrying on or doing what.
I think you are right. And I mean, not to go all cliche, the idea of styles make fights and to talk about who's around them, with the greatest of respect to Anthony Joshua, unless he changes his game plan somewhat radically, the rematch probably goes the same way. He's got to really try and bang him out. You know, Dillian and Derek, and again, I mean this with the greatest of respect to Dillian. Dillian probably doesn't have the boxing IQ that Oleksandr Usyk has. However, Derek has pushed Oleksandr really, really close. Dillian is similar to Derek, just a couple levels better, therefore probably presents a sterner test. If the same would happen if Dillian tried to outbox Oleksandr Usyk, you know, Usyk could probably do a similar thing to AJ. But if Dillian goes in and cannonballs him, I don't see how Usyk can do that. And AJ has to do.
I think
the same thing.
That steamball effect is what I'd think. You know, again, the thing with Dill is his lack of respect for people is what separates him. No, it's not like he respects them afterwards. Yeah, he's not. He's just saying, listen, I'm here to steamroll and do wrecking ball, and I feel like the punch is what he'll be throwing because Derek punches with everything, but Dillian's just a little bit more precise than Derek. You know, like Derek, everyone I know there's a similar because they've got that tough, gritty mentality, but Dill just a bit more. His boxing ability is a bit more sharp. His catch and shoots, his uppercuts, his body punching, his jab. But they've both got that toughness, that grit, that determination. But Dill is a lot more spiteful and he's more precise with his punching. You know what I mean? He will catch a punch to give you back one which is equally devastating. You know what I mean? So I felt like, you know, certain styles match certain fighters. An Usyk fight, I think, is all bad for Usyk. He'll come and do all that nice guy stuff, and Dill will be just trying to push him back to the ropes and let rip and try and tear him a whole new arsehole and punch his blood clot rib cage into his mouth and just, you know, like be pushing him over the ropes and trying to punch him into the listen, he just and that will probably make Usyk come forward. And what that will do is that will open him up to maybe wanting to stand and fight, and which will end up being a bad mistake. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The question to go back to then is, I guess, can AJ do that? Because we all know AJ can fight. He's a great boxer. Do you know? I'm not taking anything away from his boxing ability. It's just not quite at the level of Oleksandr Usyk, which is not too shabby. But can he resort to that fighting style, make it grim, make it horrible, make it ugly, like Chisora did, like a Dillian would. Maybe, do you know? Maybe like I think another stylistically good fight after what we've seen this weekend is Parker Usyk. You know, I would want to see which way Parker would go because he's similar to AJ in many ways. He will try and outbox him. He'll believe in his boxing ability, but does he still have that fighting ability? Can he just, like you say, if it gets onto the ropes, forget all your technical stuff. It ain't happening anymore. You're in a fight now. If you try and chess match this kid, you know you'll go with two black eyes and a crooked nose. Go in on him. Get your head on his chest and break his ribs. Can AJ do that? Because he didn't in the first fight. You know, that's where fundamentally the number of people around me, and Dean, I'm sure you were the same. The number of people around me saying every time he applied a bit of pressure, he stepped back almost. AJ, I don't think he was admiring his work. I think he just didn't want to get caught. He was anticipating almost. Whereas, like Dean says, you've got to lose that respect. You know, he obviously caught Usyk. Usyk's face tells a story. You know, he's cuts here, bruises, whatever. You're capable of hitting this kid. So go and do it. Maybe don't be as respectful this time. And for God's sake, man, take all the people out your corner. Way too many voices in your ear. Way too many voices. When you're in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th rounds of a world heavyweight title fight with 80,000 fans or whatever around you, mate, you've got to know what to focus on. And if you've got 3 people coming saying different things, it's easy to say in hindsight, but it's no wonder. Do you know what I mean? It's no wonder someone with the ability of Usyk was able to do what he did.
I think in hindsight, we can look at it and say almost like overcomplicated a very big man versus a smaller guy. Like you said, Dillian would have no respect for him, and he would take a few punches to try and land his own and try get him engaged. I think when you look at the other big men, like Fury, for example, uses his size unbelievably well now as well, with them, especially with Sugar Hill. Like, he'll lean on Wilder. And Wilder's normally the big dominant one. He bullied the bullet. He went and wrapped him up. And you can tell when you've got like a 20-stone man leaning on you, you take your breath away. Like, Anthony Joshua's got to find that balance of not maybe rushing straight in, because he's obviously, he were getting peppered enough so he didn't want to jump in, but he needs to be carefully apply some sort of pressure where he can like assert his like size on him, because if he does that, you wouldn't think that Usyk would be able to stand it, because he's a big boy, Anthony Joshua. So it's going to be interesting, but he needs to change it up massively in terms of the first fight. And I agree with you, Chris, about the voices in the corner. It almost seems like, too many cooks, spoiled it. So we'll see what happens. Another fight on the list, I think it's only fair we put him on as well. George Kambosis against Teofimo Lopez. He was a huge underdog in that fight. Nobody, if we're being honest, gave him a cat in hell's chance, apart from him, his dad, his team. And you know what? He did exactly what you should do after winning a big fight. He's been absolutely everywhere. Every time I switch Twitter on, he's at a basketball game. He's at the Haney fight promoting. He's taking advantage of his new status as champion, unified champion. Dean, how impressed were you with Cambosis' performance of?
So let me tell you something. He was a rightful, deserved winner. I was there in New York to witness the history and of the upset, and it's quite funny because we was out with what's his name, Lopez Senior, the night before. I was like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I was like, well, he should be really in bed tonight. His son's got a hell of a fight,
It's not fault.
Yeah. So I was thinking he should be really in bed, but hey, he's up giving us tutorials about combinations, we should be using in the bar. And there was loads of people, the WBC, WBO presidents. There was loads of people there, and it was out. But it was quite fun. It's interesting to watch, but I was thinking, I hope this doesn't come back to bite him on the arse. And then at ringside, again, he was dancing and foolery and mockery and not giving him the right information in there and saying, it's a catwalk, it's a pit, like that kind of thing at the side of the ring. And I felt like he should have been using that energy to say to his son, you know what, boy, you might be actually a real fighter here tonight. You know what I mean? You look like you're coming up short. Let's try and get serious and try and, get this guy out of here, because you could be on the end of a beating it. And I'm not gonna lie, Cambosis matched him in every department. Every time Lopez tried to rally, he rallied even more. He went down, he got up, and he finished that round even stronger. And I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was very, very surprised. So I had a quite an in-depth conversation with him whilst I was in Vegas as well. I saw him actually in New York, because I actually put the live on, and then he come up to the camera and was like saying, shout out my UK fans, I'm gonna do it and whatnot. And it was nice of him to come up to the camera and do that. I was like, yo, what do you think of the, the UK fans? And he said, shout out them, whatever. And even I didn't really believe he was gonna do it. I felt like he was coming here as cannon fodder and he was gonna get his ass smoked. And we fast became believers in there, man, of his mentality. He was sharp, he was fast, he was determined, the will, the passion. And he just knew, once he knew it was his night, he was like a dog with a bone, man. He was just not going to let go. And he could see that he was, in the end, when my man said, I felt I won, he only won 2 rounds or something, I was like, this guy is, him and his pops is smoking the same joints.
I felt bad, mate, because I watched it thinking, when he watches that back, it'll look really bad, because it was a clear winner for me. I mean, I know some people said it was close. I thought it was very clear who won that fight. Without doubt, he didn't win the fight. And I hope that, because he's a nice kid, he's Teofimo, I hope that he watches that back and realises, you know what, I got that wrong. Because he can come again. He's a good fighter. People forget, he's the guy who beat Lomachenko. I don't want to hear anything about, what Lomachenko is. He's an unbelievable fighter, but he still beat Lomachenko. What's your take on this, Chris, and Cambosis and his sort of rise to the top? Because he's at the top now, 100%.
I'm going to be honest. I wrote Kambosos off completely for this fight. You got to hold your hands up, haven't you? I wrote him off. The guy had come off a split decision to Selby in his previous fight, and I thought Selby probably did enough to win that fight. So the fact that he was going in with, as you say, the guy who beats Lomachenko, I'm thinking, give me a break. Like, do you know what I mean? Let's just get this fight done with, and then we can start talking about Haney and whoever else. Sorry, doesn't matter. We're all good. So for him to come in and do that, and I saw a good friend of mine tweet something that was probably the most apt thing to say after a fight of that magnitude that played out the way it did. He said, is Teofimo Lopez the first fighter in history to have upset of the year fights twice on the spin, but go from being the winner of upset of the year to loser of upset of the year like that. Do you know, I can't think of any other fighter who's gone and done that. And it's a good way of looking at it. And now Cambosis, like you say, he's doing those things right. Well, you said, Matt, he's getting himself advertised. He's getting his name around there. He's self-marketing, self-promoting. But at the same time, he's flexing a little bit in them boardrooms. Because, listen, Devin Haney, Lomachenko, Ryan Garcia, whoever it is, if you want to come and get hold of these, you're coming to my house. You know, we're going to Australia. He's not talking about, Vegas or New York. No. That's where you guys get the favors. You're coming to my house. And listen, it may well be that once again we have another upset and he goes and gets schooled by Haney or Tank or whoever, probably Devin Haney, over in Australia. But in that time, he's made his whole career. Do you know what I mean? The status that he will have back home from that alone and bringing a fight of that magnitude. You remember Jeff Horn? Do you know what I mean? All right, people sort of give him a bit of stick about how his career played out in the latter years, but that's the guy that dragged Manny Pacquiao to Australia and got the win. I'm not going to say he beat him, but you know what I mean? He got the win. He got his arm raised. Cambosis is in. He's done that for his own career now, and like Dean said, once he sniffed that, that was on the cards, he was not prepared to let it go. And I think when you've got a fighter with that instinct in him, he's a hard man to beat. And now from it, we've almost got this new character in boxing, the humble Teo. Do you know what I mean? He's gone from being the loudest voice on the block to, all in the big plan and everything else. And he's gone a lot quieter. He'll come back. He's a young lad. Beats Lomachenko. Of course, he's got loads to offer. Still wants Josh Taylor. I think that's all kinds of the wrong fight for him, but I can see why he wants it. He'll come back again. Of course he will. Who knows? He'll get a rematch with Cambosos a little further down the line. I don't know. But the fight delivered. And again, I'm glad it delivered at the lighter weights because the heavyweights and the middleweights get all the conversation. They get all the talk. When the big fights happen at the lighter weights, they've got to deliver. You get a fight of the year contender like that one where both guys have come out amazing.
Oh, hold on, guys. Sorry. One sec. My daughter's here. Listen, boxing is full of tricks and surprises. As much as people say, we've got to give credit to Mayweather. Obviously, we spoke about him in the beginning. The undefeated thing looks so fashionable, but it's not a real reality. There's only a handful of fighters, Calzaghe, there's a few other guys maybe that have finished their careers undefeated. But I mean, in the grand scheme, those guys would probably end up catching an L, and it will be either the making of them or the breaking of them. You know what I mean? So, but that Lopez thing, Cambosis.
Put those careers under a microscope. Put those careers under a microscope. Put the ones that have been defeated under a microscope. Put Floyd Mayweather's career under a microscope, or Joe Calzaghe's. Listen, I love Joe Calzaghe. Probably the fighter that brought me into boxing the most was Joe Calzaghe. But I know, as much that people make moves in their careers outside of the ring. If Floyd had fought this guy, and this guy, would he still have that zero? If Joe Calzaghe had fought Roy Jones so many years earlier, would he still have that zero? Maybe not. And the thing is, when you look back, if you go and ask the people of the generation above us, who the best boxers, who the ones that you grew up watching, they'll talk about Hagler, Hearns, Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
All of them got losses. But you don't throw any disrespect whatsoever anywhere near their names because of what they brought to the sport. So the guy, the youth of today, the sort of young teenagers up to the early 20s or whatever, they'll be talking in 20 years about watching Teo Lopez against Lomachenko and Kambosos, and hopefully Teo Lopez against Haney and Teo Lopez against Garcia and Tank and all them. And hopefully that one loss doesn't mean those fights don't happen.
I think, let's look at this weekend. We had Derek Chisora headlining against Joseph Parker. Derek Chisora is in double figures for losses. His credibility hasn't gone down because he turns up to fight whoever he's fighting, especially the last 6-7 fights. Like, since he started getting himself in proper shape for fights, like, he comes and brings it. Like this week, it's absolutely, it's madness. So even if he doesn't win the world title, his career will be in British boxing history and be in boxing history because of how he fights. So although, like, my favourite fighter is for all time is Floyd, like, it is sort of his fault everyone markets themselves off being undefeated because it sometimes stops the risks of taking them fights. I just hope the likes of, like, Gervonta, another one of my favourite fighters, I hope he gets to fight all the other fighters, that we talk about. Like, him and Devin Haney is a ridiculously big fight. Like, in the next 2 years, that's huge. Throw Shakur Stevenson in there. Throw everyone, the others we've just mentioned in there, Cambosis as well. Like, these are great fights. I just hope they get made, but we'll see if politics and stuff allow it. Hopefully they do. Moving on, we sort of half touched on Josh Taylor. I've thrown him in there because he's undisputed. Beat Jose Ramirez out there in the States. I don't know, were you there for that, Dean?
Yeah, that was a hell of a fight as well, man. I was there with Josh Taylor and the team. Them guys are going to beat Josh's head. Save that boy.
This is the most connected man in boxing we're talking to.
Every fight you've been.
Hey, listen. I would literally just. I've been at a few. You're right. I've been at even this time. I was at the Gervonta Davis versus Pitbull. I was at Haney versus Jojo Diaz. I was at all of them fights. I was at the Lopez versus Cambosis. Yeah, that was my tour of America just now.
We'll see you in Australia for Cambosis Haney.
That Australia's a bit too far. I don't think that will catch me.
Get yourself on a nice, comfy, first-class bed in flight. Yeah, you'll be fine. It's
long, long. Yeah, Josh Taylor, undisputed, incredible.
Can I just say, by the way, I would pay to watch the documentary of Dean Whyte traveling Australia. I would pay to watch that. Trying all the different foods, getting out in the desert. I'd watch that.
Do you know? It's funny to say that because I was actually going to do something about me on tour. It's quite funny, like around America. I think that, like I've done the tour of Mexico, America. I think it would be quite an interesting documentary because we ended up going to like Salas's gym with Spider. We sparred a few guys there. Then we went to Wild Card. We sparred a few guys there. So we was moving around. We was at Top Rank Gym for a bit as well with, obviously, Sugar Hill was there. Coach K, Shakur Stevenson's trainer, and Gerard Anderson's trainer, the heavyweight, 10-0, 10 knockouts from America.
Who's the Reverend that Bud has?
Again?
Who's the Reverend that Bud has?
My volume's gone. Someone phoned me, so I can't really hear you. I've been struggling for about an hour, about 20 minutes. I've just been winging it. Sorry, guys. I just about could hear you.
Sorry, we can't go down the rabbit hole of who trains who, but I was just saying Terence Crawford's coach, he's based over there as well, isn't he? Top Rank.
Yeah, the big guy, I can't remember his name, but I don't know where he's based though. But
Reverend Summit.
Yeah, I know the guy you're talking about. I know them. I know that team. I know Crawford as well. He's a good guy as well. He's a hell of a fighter as well. There's a lot of guys that's based in Las Vegas. There's loads of gyms. But the Top Rank gym's pretty good. It's a bit kind of techie now because Tyson Fury's there. But my guy, Frank Cena. Is it Frank Cena or Frank Shea? Big up him anyway. He runs that gym. He's my guy, top rank. Looks after me and that. And we went to a rodeo, you know, the bull ride. I met the world champion, 3-time world champion, one young guy on. He came to the boxing gym. We took some pictures and stuff, but it's quite interesting. We had a good time out there in Vegas. You know, I met some good people, interesting people. So I definitely lived a great full life through boxing somewhat.
Just a bit. Talk to us about the fight that you saw then when you were in the States. Josh Taylor, undisputed.
They were good fights, you know. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and leave and then come back because it's better I hear you lot, because trust me. Give me 2 seconds.
Well then.
There you go. That is way better. Thank the Lord. I was struggling for a good 20-odd minutes, you know. I think someone for 17 minutes. And literally, other than that, I've had to look at you lot's lips and lean my head and try and get. Fuck you, Chris. Oh yeah, we're filming. Sorry, guys. It's a bit of pantomime. Something for Christmas. Enjoy yourself, guys.
It's one for the blooper reel.
Yeah. But Vegas, you know, that trip was amazing. We had a good time. New York was really good. It was short and sweet. Very cold, obviously, this time of year, December. But Vegas is quite warm. But that was good. I think there was obviously a lot more to do. There was a longer period of build up in, because I think I got to New York on the Thursday. So, and it was Thanksgiving around the time I got there. So,
what do you make of Josh Taylor's performance then against Ramirez, now becoming undisputed?
Nah, Josh is a beast, man. Let me tell you something. Beast of a fighter, beast of a man. He's got a similar attitude. You know, like he's a small Dillian Whyte. He's got that. You know, there's an attitude with him. Like he doesn't give a fuck. And those kind of people are hard to break. You know, even if they lose, they're hard to break. They just got that. There's something with them that like they're happy to fight anyone. Like, oh, I'll rate him, but you know, I rate myself more. You know, like that kind of. They've got there's something in them, and there's those kind of fighters, man. You can't write them kind of fighters off, but he's shown that. And I'm not gonna lie, with someone with his record, he's faced them all, man. He's faced them all.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know how many fights. Was he at 20 fights, 19 fights?
Yeah, something like that. Short
I think he was at 18, 19 when I last remembered. But I mean, I rounded at 20 just to be nice. But I mean, for someone to face the fighters he's faced is phenomenal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love a fighter.
In terms of the other fighters out there, obviously Canelo had a stellar year again. He beat Caleb Plant, also beat Billy Joe Saunders. Would you say right now Canelo pound for pound #1?
Hell yeah! Listen. He's an absolute wrecking machine. And we forget that one of the top, well, probably the top, was Callum Smith out of that bunch, probably. And that was probably the only one who saw the 12 rounds. You get me? Yeah. So that would show you how good he is as well, because many people ain't seeing the 12th round, mate.
No, brutal.
Yeah, I mean, he took a little bit of a pasting, but I mean, still strong enough and skillful enough. Because even he's done a catch and shoot and hit him on the sweet spot, and it just did nothing. I watched even Danny Jacob replay the other day when it was online. He done a catch, he twisted and came back and popped him straight on with a left hook, and he just rid it and came back and started teeing off. The guy's a machine. Big fan of Canelo.
I thought Saunders was doing really well against him, to be honest, and then he walked into an absolute face breaker of a punch. Which is a shame. That was a
Matt's bad for business, you know. Matt said a face breaker of a shot. Oh, Billy, this ain't got nothing to do with me anyway. It's all Matt. What's his Matt? Matt Lebanhan. So any insults, we know to point at, Billy. I'm a fan of yours as well. Hell of
Chris
a fan.
has left the chat.
I thought Billy were winning the fight, and listen, if it would have carried on, I thought he'd have got to 12 rounds, and I think, like I said, I'd been winning up to that point, and a lot of people didn't. But it was a face breaking shot. No, that's no disrespect to him. He went into it at that point of connection where he was obviously at his most powerful. So it was really a horrendous shot to take. So I hope he comes back, Billy, as well. I think he's still got a lot to offer in the sport. World class.
Yeah. Hell of a fighter. Do you know what I would say? I think it's a signature. There's a signature thing what Canelo does. He's very durable. He can take a shot. His conditioning is second to none. And he always second half of the fights, he breaks his people down. He outfights them, he out-conditions them, he out-toughs them, and then he ends up winning either via TKO or KO or whatever. But he normally is like the bounty. He always gets his people, you know. And 9 times out of 10, he's always losing the fight and then comes back and stops them. But he knows that. That's why he normally thinks, I'm going to be bigger, stronger, more conditioned than these people. And it's always a tale of two halves in fights. People come out like fast and out of the blocks, and they're doing great. If you look at the fight this weekend with Better BF and Marcus Brown, it was the same. He come out in blistering fashion, won the first 3-4, and after that, the shop got closed up and absolutely got a hammering, battered from pillar to post, and then he got stopped. And it's a similar kind of tradition what Canelo does to people. They come out, they're sharp, they're fast, they have all the ideas in the world. By the 7th, 8th, 9th round, he stops them.
Yeah. He manages the fights really well. He's never bothered if he's 4 rounds down because he almost he knows what's coming. Like he knows that in a few rounds time he'll have his way, which is it's incredible. Not many fighters can do that. Just before we wrap this up, there's one fighter, I say fighter because we've got to call him that now, and I want to touch on it. Jake Paul. Dean, talk to me about Jake Paul. He's just absolutely laid out Tyron Woodley. After taking, I think he got cut, if I remember rightly, accidental elbow or something like that. And, he did what he said he'd do, and he went and knocked out Tyron Woodley. Combat athlete, UFC, obviously not a professional boxer, but are we now, maybe if he fights a boxer next, starting to, integrate him a little bit into our sport with what he's bringing to the sport in terms of audience?
He's doing phenomenal for the entertainment value he brings to the boxing. He's got his own database. He's got his own fan base. He's got his own traction. It's the Jake Paul show. It's whatever it is. It's just their show. Credit to him that he's managed to. He's a man that's got the balls to go into the ring and go and put it all on the line every single time with someone, irrespective of what I think and how the narrative is painted in this, because I'm going to break the painting and the picture down in a sec. But he's doing tremendous in what he's done. He's bringing on other fighters, making them money, making them rich. That Serrano saying she's become a millionaire now.
Yeah.
And that's a woman fighter. That's very rare to hear. So credit to him that he's managed to come into boxing, make all this money, make others rich, and giving people money and giving them an opportunity, which is great in itself. In terms of the spectacle, it's kind of a bit dodgy because him and his brother, let's put him in the picture, the weight classes, I don't know what the weight classes are because these guys are big motherfuckers, sorry to say. And Tyron Woodley used to fight at middleweight or welterweight, actually. So you can see the difference in class. I don't know if there's a weight class for these kind of guys when they fight. It's kind of dodgy, and you know what I mean? He's not a heavyweight or he's not a cruiserweight, Tyron Woodley, is he?
No.
The second thing is the magical dropping your left hand as an overhand comes. Hey, you know that?
I'm not having it.
Man, it was perfectly timed, and he sent that from half the across the ring. It was a good shot, mind you, but believe me, that's not the hand that you're going to drop if an overhand comes.
So are you saying then? Do you think, in your opinion, that this was that way? This was rigged because I think there could have been other ways to win that fight without taking one flush there. You could have had him not thrown back if he wanted to do that. That was bad.
I've heard through many sources you know, there was many stipulations in the previous fight, and then this fight, and this weren't meant to be done, and this weren't. And then I felt like do you remember that conversation where they was talking about he needed to get his name titled on him to get a rematch and all this shit? The Tyron Woodley, it means nothing getting knocked out, because he probably made more money than he in the 2 fights he done with Jake Paul than his whole UFC career. So irrespective of going to sleep for a couple of seconds, it doesn't matter.
You see these posts that Jake Paul's put up since about, and I'm, for the record, no commenting, right? But it does make you wonder when you see things like the bank robbery post. We've robbed the bank. We've put it up. Now, I know why he's saying it. He's not the first person to say, having this fight, I've robbed the bank. But if you're Jake Paul and you do know that maybe Tyrone's known he's not going to win that fight and he's done it for the cameras or whatever else, you have robbed the bank a little bit, because you've taken a hell of a payday. You've got what Jake's about. Jake is not just about economic capital. He's about cultural capital as much as he's about economic. So he will judge that on how many new followers did he get? How much more reach did he get? How many more impressions on social? Click-throughs to his website? How many more followers did the team around him get, i.e. his brother? This fucking robot that's now got its own Instagram page. How many more followers did that get? Do you know what I mean? All this stuff. He'll look at all that as well as the cash money in the back of the truck. Do you know what I mean? So for him to get all that stuff, he has robbed the bank. He has put on that performance, and he's got away with it a little bit easier because Tommy Fury didn't enter the ring. You know, for whatever reason, he didn't enter the ring.
Not to say it weren't going to end any different anyway, because not being funny, I don't really rate, Tommy as a great boxer just yet. I felt like his performances as a professional ain't been the greatest. And what I would say is credit to them boys, them Jake Paul brothers or whatever, Jake and his brother, the Paul brothers, they put their time into boxing. That's what I will say. They set up they got a mansion with a bloody boxing ring in there. They got a full team of the best people they can hire, and they train their socks off day in, day out. So on that notion, when you've got money, when you've got desire, and you can paint the narrative, you can make the lane as good as you want it to be, and you can become as good as you want to be eventually. And I know they're talking about that Canelo fight. It probably will happen, and it will make some crazy money if it ever happens, because the numbers are there. That's gonna surpass any numbers you have ever seen. You best believe that. But the only problem I think is they're not going to be able to bribe Canelo to lose. So Canelo's going to get him up out of there.
I think when all is said and done, on the Jake Paul legacy, and I know we're predicting which fights will and won't happen here, Canelo, even if Canelo does happen, the biggest fight Jake Paul can ever get, in my opinion, is Conor McGregor. Is Conor McGregor as good as Canelo? No, of course he's not. But from a marketing perspective, oh my word. Can you imagine if that fight comes off? And do you know what? Probably beats Conor McGregor just through size advantage and everything else. I can see Matt's
laughing at it. He's like,
I want to win it, Conor. Nah, you know what? I know what you're saying. It's yeah. No,
I've offended him.
No, but like,
hey, let me come in. Hey, I need to go in there. Give me that 20-30 million. Fuck it. Hit the deck. No problem, guys. I'll give it a good run as long as we go, and then I'll take me money and buy myself a lovely Rolls Royce when I get back.
But just to touch on it, Dean, you know as well as I do in boxing, like there's other ways to lose, right? So you won't like here's a free shot. There's having a free shot, but if he was to lose in a fixed way, he could have been just against the ropes, just getting bang, 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 flurry of punches, and all he has to do is not throw back for a significant amount of time, and the ref would have gone, well, you know what? Yeah, rather than getting,
it might not be enough. Jake Paul, there's still that question of did they stop it too soon? You know, like did they stop it too soon? They want that. It's defining. It's the finale. There's no question. Now people are questioning. Well, he went down like a planker, fucking board or piece of shit or whatever, and he weren't twitching. If he was really knocked out, why wasn't he twitching and convulsing? That's what people are saying. It's crazy. Like, people are never.
You know, Twitch rate. Nah, that it was a good shot against someone who wasn't a boxer.
No, think about if you're a professional athlete, just go back and watch a few fights. Yeah, you see, normally, all right, the guy throws a right overhand. Yeah, he didn't try to block. He didn't try to step back. He does this from here. He goes like that. Just watch it, my friend. I've
seen the video of Jake Paul supposedly giving the cue, where he goes like this on it.
He goes like that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the bit they say when he goes like that and turns his wrist. That's the cue to drop his hand. But
I'm not gonna lie. Just watching this whole scenario, I didn't see him get. I don't recall him getting knocked out cold like that in UFC. Maybe one time I remember against I can't remember the guy's name. I can see the face. But other than that, he fought some real tough nuts, swinging. They were all, and he didn't get knocked out like that. And this is a man who's been fighting less than 3 years. Excuse me. And just throws a wonder overhand and gets him out of there. And he just manages to drop his hand at the right time to make it a perfect shot. Credit to them boys, man. They're making their money. Wish them all the best, man. Just give me some of that pie. That's what I say, my friends. Let's try and get that magical drop hand. How's it go? Woo-hoo. Woo. How it goes. I don't know.
That's what it does.
Sorry, man. I ain't falling for it. Sorry.
You're good. Right. I think that about wraps it up. We've covered quite a lot of stuff there, and we had a little sidebar with talking about Jake influence. I've got to catch up again soon once we sort of see the schedule for the new year and our boxing looks for 2021. God forbid these restrictions. There's no stupid restrictions that come in that put stuff back, but I think it's inevitable by the sound of it. But hopefully we get some good shows on for the next year. So yeah, listen, Dean, thanks for coming on. Met you Saturday. You're the first one of the first. You got to 10,000 views on our channel. You're my first big video, so I appreciate you.
Thanks very much. So good, man.
No worries.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Chris, we're going to catch up anyway. We need to chat, but I'll bill you tomorrow, son.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it. Chris, okay, guys, let's wrap it there. Have a good night. And we should say, if we don't speak before, to everyone, Happy Christmas and all that as well.
Happy Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho.